Happy Wednesday. Welcome to our November virtual Sip with Vicki. We are really excited to have you all here today. We've gotten in a lot of questions and we've picked the ones that we thought would resonate with you the most. Vicki has 20 years of work at home contact center experience in small, medium, and large size contact centers. She's an operations person and then responsible for driving performance inside the contact center. So what she talks about today is not theory or what she's heard from other sources. These are actual strategies and leadership tools that she has used to drive performance. She is a subject matter expert on work at home. Vicki moves quickly, so get ready. Welcome, Vicki.
Well, thanks, Julie, for the great introduction, and welcome everybody to our November virtual Sip with Vicki. I've got my beverage today. It's a spiced tea from Awful Annie's restaurant in Auburn, California. And so that's what I'm sipping today. Want to welcome, we have a couple of groups of leaders that are coming from two specific companies. So I want to say welcome to them. And we hope that you'll get plenty of answers to your questions, and feel free to put them in the chat and Julie will feed those to me as they come up. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get started. Julie, why don't you give me the first question?
Perfect. Someone asks, how do you implement change successfully? And I just wanted to add in a question. Do you believe that there's a difference in implementing change in work at home versus brick and mortar?
Great questions. Absolutely, there's a change. And the obvious change is that we can't see people, right? And so we have to drive everything different in work at home. So we call it re-engineering. It could be evolving your leadership style. It could be totally creating it or developing it, but you have to change the way that you manage. And one of the biggest challenges is driving change, whether it's a new piece of software, new scheduling, just a new policy or procedure, people coming out of nesting, training on the operations floor. I mean, there's changes all over the place. And so the very first key to this is that you have to understand what you have to drive toward. So it's the brick and mortar actions, feelings and emotions, right? How people are responding, and you have to duplicate those inside work at home. And so for a moment, I just want to sort of take you back a little bit and think about if you're still going to the office or when you used to. You got out of the car, you saw 2 or 3 people, you might have waved, you could have talked with them. You could have talked about something that's going on in the business. It could have been personal. It could have been you were upset about something. You could have been really fired up. It could be a number of types of exchanges, but you had those in the parking lot. You go through security, you swipe your badge or go through a metal detector. You're going to your locker, going to the floor, and you're walking through the hallways and you meet people. And at every single junction, that's called a touch point. And so there's emotions that are evoked with whatever the conversations are as you're walking through the halls. And you may go out to get the muffin lady and get a muffin. You could go into the break room, the restroom. Then you get to the floor and you're standing up, you're looking around. You've got people behind you, people in front of you, on the side of you, you're hanging over the wall, and you're exchanging all this information. This is what is missing inside of work at home. And the chat rooms just are not going to give them the same feeling. As a leader, your job is to try to actually duplicate what people are used to and the feelings they're used to inside the work at home environment. So change is driven very specifically by more communication. But then you need to do what we call is communication feedback loops. Best practice is using video. Now, people don't think they have to get a studio and fancy lights. They don't. People do selfie videos all the time on their phones. But by telling people what's going on, then you open up the discussion on a chat, a discussion board, a team meeting, a town hall, whatever different avenue you're using. Then you take that information and then you feed it back. Isn't that what happens in brick and mortar, right? You're coming in and someone says, oh my gosh, I heard we're switching software. Is my schedule going to change? And you're like, whoa, hold on. Nothing's changing. We're just looking at software to make it easier for you. Oh, well, thank goodness, the agent said. I thought you were changing everybody's schedule. So see how things like that get going? So what you would normally do is the next time you saw somebody in the hallway and they came up and they started talking about schedules, you say, wait a minute, we're not changing the way we schedule. We're just making it easier. Your schedules aren't going to change. Oh, the agent says, thank goodness. So you do the same thing in video. When you hear negativity, you go out in a video. Hey, everybody. Hey, I heard several people, they're concerned your schedule is going to change just because we're changing software. That's not the case. And if you have suggestions how we can drive communication better, put them in the discussion board, or let's put them on the chat, or we'll have a team meeting on Thursday, whatever the case may be. And you feed that back to them. And those loops continue with everything. Now think about this. Your agents, your managers, if you're a VP, they're doing the same thing. They're talking to colleagues as well in the virtual work at home space. They need to be creating their own communication feedback loops. Just having a discussion, bringing things up even when they're negative or when they're positive, letting people discuss it, feeding back that information to the floor or to your colleagues, if you're a senior level leader, and then doing it all over again. That's how you control the narrative. Now, people say, gosh, Vicki, that takes a lot of time. Once you get in the hang of it, it becomes like second nature. And I believe, because I've been doing work at home for 20 years as an operator, I believe that you can do just as much, if not more, and faster in virtual if everything is really put together right. And it takes a time to sort of re-engineer everything. So that's the key. And then the touch points are the individual times you talk to somebody by the phone, email, chat, just like you would in the brick and mortar when you're talking to people. More touch points and communication feedbacks. And that really is the key to driving change, so that you literally can tell people what's going on, quiet their fears, and give them more information. And it is a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the basics of driving change, communication feedback loops.
That's great. I can't tell you how many times people have actually, because I do the video messages all the time via chat. And I have had people say, oh, it was so nice to see your face. Because I definitely find it is just working at home in any capacity. It's so much harder to build a rapport when you don't see someone. I mean, it's obviously it's doable, but yeah, I definitely have had people comment, and I almost feel like because I've made an effort in doing all the different touch points, I feel like my relationships with the people that I work with are actually a lot stronger because I'm making that effort. So that's good. Someone asks, how do you get communication in a virtual environment to stick?
Okay. A great question. So communicating, you want to utilize the communication feedback loops, and you want to obviously do your touch points, but they have to be built on what I call a foundation. And so these are like bricks, and you build them. And before I even tell you what those bricks are, you don't get a management meeting together. You don't come up with a mission statement. You don't tell everybody, what these foundations are. You actually demonstrate it. And demonstration is way more important in work at home to be delivered, because in a brick and mortar, they can see you across the floor, right? They can see the group in the floor, across the floor talking. They can read body language, if they're whispering, if they're loud, if their arms are crossed, right? If they're looking around while they're talking. You can formulate things when you see them on a regular basis. But in work at home, you absolutely can't. So these foundations are huge. One is, do the agents believe that you're telling them the truth? Do they believe the company's telling them the truth? Now, before you say, oh yeah, we always tell the truth, it doesn't matter what we think as leaders. It only matters what the front lines think about you, or your direct reports, or the people below you on the corporate, organizational chart. It's what they believe about you, not what you believe about yourself. Is the company being transparent? If the company isn't being transparent, they're always going to be looking for that back door. That negative Nelly is going to be, out there spreading the gossip, and it's hard to control that without a lot of communication feedback loops. So you really have got to be totally transparent. So that's the next level. Will my company, do they really listen to me? Do we ask the front lines what we need help with? I never make a business decision in my organization without talking to people that are working in my organization. Never. Because they know more than me. I'm not taking calls. I'm not answering customer emails, right? I'm not, working at the RTA desk. I'm not a quality analyst. I mean, what do they really, what do they want me to know about? So I always listen to them. And then I use a communication feedback loop to go out and tell people, hey, I was talking to so-and-so in QA, and this is what I'm hearing. How do you feel about it? What if I did X? How do you feel about that? And we use discussion boards and the chats. And then I gather that information and I feed it back to them. Even you can do an employee survey, 1 or 2 questions. 48% of you think that the scheduling software sucks. And guess what? I totally agree with you. That's why we're looking. So will they listen to me? The next one is, do they care? Because if you listen, it's great, but if you don't care and do something about it, then they're not going to believe that you care. And do they value me as a human being? With everything that's happening in our world and the changing business climate, What exactly do people, are you listening to what I need? I'm a homeschooling mom. Are you listening? I need a flexible schedule. Are you listening? Do you really care? Do you value me as a human being? They need to know that. And they need to be saying you do. You just don't say, oh yeah, we value people. Of course, it's part of a mission statement. It was in the brick and mortar up on the wall. It literally is how they feel. And the last one is career development. Do they care about my career? And what these folks sitting in these chairs doing customer interactions, they want to move up, move out of the contact center. Do you care about their career development? How do you move them up the ranks? They want to know this. That's the foundation. And that helps it stick when you do your communication feedback loops and your touch points. I hope that answered that question about stickiness on communication.
All right. This one actually has come in the past. It came in a couple of times this month as well. So obviously we need to talk about it. How do you reduce attrition?
Great question. And it is retaining employees is hot today because it costs between $5,000 to $10,000 to source, recruit, hire, onboard, train, nest, and get on the operations floor someone up to speed to competency. It costs $5,000 to $10,000 and sometimes more inside if you take all the costs into consideration. So when you lose people, it really can erode money off your bottom line, and senior level executives are looking at that. So retention is extremely important. So I always believe in being super simple. I do. I don't think it's super fancy. You know, we do these exit interviews and I always say, why? Why? They've left. Why are we doing surveys on why people are staying? Why aren't we finding out what they like about the company? Why aren't we asking them for ideas on employee engagement before we go out and spend $1 million or $500,000 on employee engagement software? I mean, why are we doing all that? Why don't we just ask them why they're staying and what's important to them? And then have them rank it. You can do surveys, you can do town halls, you can do team meetings, you can do videos, you could do communication feedback loops. You could jump in as a senior level executive or a contact center manager into people's team meetings. If you're a supervisor, go visit another team meeting and be the guest and talk with people. Start spreading out around and really making people feel that they're valued. Find out why they're staying. This isn't fancy, ladies and gentlemen. It really is not. Find out why they're staying and find out what they need. And then use your communication feedback loops and your touch points and other things like town halls and fireside chats and team meetings, and take two teams and put them together. You know, we used to do that in brick and mortar, right? You could visit another team, or two team supervisors would get together and they'd have a big joint one. Do that in virtual. So that's what I would say about curbing attrition. Don't stick your head in the sand and don't think you know anything as a leader until you hear it out of the agent's mouths. That's what I would say about that.
Perfect. This might take some interpretation on your part, but someone asks, how do you handle problematic people?
Okay, well, it depends what problematic means. Is this people not showing up to work? Is it people that just aren't up to speed yet? Or is it the negative Nelly? Is it the person that's constantly fighting you no matter what you say? If the sky's blue, it's green. I would probably handle it pretty much the same way. So I've got tools in my toolbox. I have a book, the Leadership Toolbox. It's tool number 4. And it's how to basically motivate your employees and get them to buy into their own goal. So it's their carrot, basically, right? And so you have to find out why they're even working. And if they tell you, hey, I'm just working because I need a paycheck, okay, well, you can go to 1 million call centers. I mean, call center jobs are a dime a dozen. What would make you stay here? I mean, what is it that you're unhappy with? You know, what can I do? I would ask them specifics, and whatever they said they wanted, I would keep that goal in front of them. Now, how do you do that? So you have all these touch points, right? And you're in the chats, you're emailing them, you're talking to them on the phone. Please don't discount the phone, ladies and gentlemen. You don't manage by email or chat and work at home. You've got to be on the phone. You've got to be in front of them. And so I would just keep that in front of them. So if they said, well, I think this whole thing sucks because I have a crummy schedule. Okay, so what is it exactly you want? Well, I want to work this schedule. Okay, well, my job is to help you be successful. And we're going to figure out how you do that. So I'm just going into Vicki's organizations. In my organizations, you have to be a top performer. Does that mean you have to have 100% CSATs or a 95% conversion rate on sales? No. A top performer is anything you deem it to be, but you need to be consistent. So it's just not about performing for the customer. It's about performing and showing up for your teammates, helping someone that's new, helping with nesting. It's about showing up on time, staying an extra 15 minutes if the queue's busy. I mean, that's a top performer. So what you do is when you talk to Susie or Bob, you say, now look, we're getting ready to have a coaching session and I want it to be the best it can be. And I want to acknowledge the fact that you want a better schedule. And my job is to help you get that schedule. And that's what this coaching is about today. I'm going to help you with your email or your chats or your phone calls. And then you sort of frame it up and then you do it in the middle. Do you feel like I'm giving you the right coaching that you can, be a top performer so you can get a better schedule? And then I tie it down at the end as well. I keep that carrot, their carrot that they've told me, absolutely in front of them at all times. Then another tool is this. If you were in my shoes and you had an agent that was unhappy as you are, what would you tell me? Put it back in their shoes. What would you tell me? How would you help me? And flip it around. And at the end of the day, they're big people. These are adults. These aren't, 14-year-old students we have in our chairs, right? And so what I would say to them is, hey, why are you staying? And if you're not happy, then you probably need to go find another job. Let me help you with your resume. Do you know how many resumes I looked at? Thousands in my career. Again, because I value them, I care about them. And years later, they come back and I get messages all the time on LinkedIn thanking me for someone that worked for me 10 years ago, saying, wow, you know what? You were amazing. And I'm still using that same resume format. Not sure if that's a good idea today or not, but they remember me. And that's because I cared about them. So just put their carrot in front of them. That's how I would handle problem, whatever that means, problem employees at any level, I hope that helps.
Great. Someone asks, my company does everything old school. How can I get them to try new ideas that the team suggests?
Yeah. Okay, so we get this all the time. People come, they read my book, or they listen to one of our many videos we have out on our website, or they see a LinkedIn post on our company Virtual Live Labs page, and they contact us and they say this is like one of the number one questions next to communication and change. And they want to know, gee, my manager, he's just so old school. Now, I don't know if that means they're older or they've just been in the same position a long time. So let's talk. I always go back to emotions. All right. Why aren't they changing? They're afraid. They're afraid. And one of the tools in my book, tool number 6, is called the leadership mirror. So if you're a leader and your folks have been saying that you're old school, or you feel you're old, or you're afraid, then you need to take a real long look at yourself. 3 a.m. is always a real good time to do that when you're supposed to be sleeping. And you ask yourself, how am I contributing to the success or the failure of my organization? You have to ask yourself that question. And then I will tell you what I always do. Again, I said this before. Go down to the front lines and ask why they want change and what they want to change. And I would say this to a leader, and this is how I judge anything that I'm going to try in any of the contact centers I've ever led in my life. If it's legal, moral, ethical, if it won't cost us an employee, a customer, or a client, or a boatload of money, just try it. Put it in a pilot program, which is tool number 11 in my book. And it tells you how to do this, and you let them measure their own stats to see if it works. So if they think the talk track sucks, that's okay. Let a team come up with their own talk track, as long as it's legal, moral, ethical, won't cost you a customer, an employee, a client, or a boatload of money. Try it and then have them measure it. Agents are really super smart. They will decide if it's working or not. They'll tweak it, and you give them permission to bail out. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You throw the baby out with the bathwater. Oh, well. And you go on to something else. But you go back to your communication feedback loops and you give them credit for trying something and for basically saying, hey, it didn't work. Most executives try ideas and most of them don't work, right? But we're not judged how many times they work. It's like, can we get people across the finish line? If your VP or if your manager is old school, I would recommend another tool in my toolbox. And I would recommend tool number 9. And I would recommend you give an example about somebody that you know or another company that you know that tried something and how well it turned out. And you can literally find out these third-party stories, how to get you communicate faster and build momentum inside your organization by going to other people that are in your company or going to other people that work in the contact center space, or that you listen to a video. It doesn't matter. I mean, where you get the information, you go in and you tell that person that story. Your vice president, your president, your CEO, they want to have that badge of honor that says, I'm with the times. They want it. You just got to give them enough reason. And so you go and you give them a story about something that you heard that happened, or something that happened in your own organization or in a past job. You give them that example and you tell them, this is what I want to try. And I want to do it in a controlled environment. And I will communicate with you every single day. And you start that communication feedback loop with the VP or the CEO or the SVP or the call center manager. And you use that and you constantly give them feedback. What you're doing is you're changing your professional maturity, you're increasing your leadership skill sets, and you're helping your boss. Because here's the bottom line. If people don't change, they're going to be left behind. And the leader's always going to be stuck holding the bag. You can't blame the supervisors and the training department and bad recruiting. You can't be blaming it on those people forever. Eventually, it's going to catch up with you as a leader, and you need to be looking at it. So yeah, we're all afraid to change. I'll give you a real quick example. I don't know how much time I've got. But we were driving CSATs. We had a huge seasonal surge. And I asked my business analyst, are we gonna make the minimum CSAT? And he came back and said, no, Vic, we're not. And so it was eventually, at the beginning, was going to be 62%. And I was like, well, that's not acceptable, obviously. As we moved closer, we were entering that last week, we still were 3 points shy on the CSAT from the minimum. And failure is not an option. I can hear my dad's voice behind me in my head. It's definitely not an option. So I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't sleep. And I had this crazy, I get crazy ideas. So I went to my direct reports the next day, called it triage, which is tool number 14 in my book. And we had a very quick 5-minute meeting. And I said, look, I want to call everybody and talk to everybody in the contact center this week to get them fired up. And there's a group of us here, my direct reports and a couple department heads. And I want us all to make these calls. I know there's a couple thousand calls. I get it. Can we do it? Now, I will say, normally people say, well, gosh, Vic, yeah, we'll try it. They tweak it a little bit. Yeah, silence, crickets. They're already working 70 hours a week, right? We're in the middle of this huge, product surge, right? And it's the last week where we're adding more and more people. And suddenly I'm like waiting. I'm like, I check my phone to see if we're still on the conference bridge. And suddenly one of my managers says, well, Vic, I'll do it for you. And I was like, okay, thanks. And someone said, yeah, I'm in, count me in. So I got them all rallied up and we did. And the week ended on a Saturday. On Tuesday morning, when the last CSAT came in that we were going to count for the month, we made it by 0.001. Now, would we have made it without it? I don't know. They tell me that was the thing that put them over the top. And we went out and congratulated everybody on making the CSAT goal. But that's sometimes what it takes. Now, would I had mud on my face? Yeah. Would I've had to apologize to my team? Yeah, it didn't work. I'm sorry. But I told them that up front. I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but I didn't have any tools or magic left in my box. So they agreed to do it and we pulled it out. So change is scary. You could be with mud on your face, but if you rally your troops and you tell them the truth, they will rally behind you. Do that with your senior level executive and try to drive change that way, and try to change old school thinking, because it can be changed. It really can.
Perfect.
Anything else? Do you have another question? We've got just a couple more minutes.
So someone says and then asks, I think I'm a good coach, but it's hard to get some CSRs up to speed. Any tips?
Okay. So, you've seen me talk about the same types of things, and I know I make it sound really simple, the communication feedback loops and the touch points, and to get their goal out in front of them, which is tool number 4 in my book. I'm going to give my book a little plug. But really, that's the key. It's literally just getting that out in front of them and keeping that out there so that they really know where they're doing, and have them track their own progress. I think that's super, super important, that they're tracking their own progress and that they can stand up and say, look what I've done. So it's basically the same things. It's communication feedback loops. It's dangling their carrot in front of them. It's the touch points. It's being transparent, showing them that you care, that you value them. And there really is sort of a sequence to do all of this. And this is what we do at Virtual Live Labs. We go in, we help drive change. We infuse leadership tools and strategies real time. This isn't classroom training. We don't have quizzes and homework and exercises for them to do. We're doing it right in the Virtual Live Labs, and they're driving their change real time and helping agents real time with new skills. I hope I answered that, Julie.
Perfect.
Oh, one more thing I want to say about that. This might be a little unusual, but this is something I've used probably in the last 10 years in my organizations. And it is literally about understanding what you're good at and what other people are good at in your organization. So let me give you a quick example, because I think this might help you with folks that aren't performing as well. So everybody has their magic, right? Some people are mother hens in the work at home environment, and they love new people, and they hug them, and virtually, of course, and they're mothering them along and helping them and coddling them and constantly doing touch points and communication feedback loops, and they almost do it like effortless, right? Those are the people for new people. Then you've got people that say, don't give me the new person, they can't even find their mouse, right? And I'll take them from medium to top performer statuses. And Virtual Live Labs, we develop programs that can move people to top performer status literally in 3 weeks. And I've been doing it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And so we literally can do that, but you can too. But there's someone in your organization that can do that. So it's literally about moving people where they need to be. So do you need to move them to a different team? Or maybe you do what we did in junior high. You have a homeroom, and then they can go to other teams to experience something else to help them over that hump. They don't have to leave your team, and you don't have to move them to the red team on the other side of the contact center. Remember that, when they'd have to move their computer over to the bad team? We say it wasn't bad, but they knew it was. You can do a lot of this virtually, and they don't even know. But they sort of intersect. They have two teams. And that way the mother hen can help them if they're new, or if they're a medium performer, they can go on to another team where maybe that supervisor is just dealing and talking with middle performers on their second pseudo team. You can do the same thing in nesting. So match people's skill sets as leaders where they're the best. A lot of moving parts, I get it. And that's why you have command centers and things like that. And you can pay for command centers with adjusting labor dollars. So it doesn't cost you any more money, but that's something else that I would do. That's a little bit more advanced, but that's another thing that I would do. Anything else, Julie?
Yeah, maybe we can squeeze in one more.
Okay, I've got 3 minutes.
All right. Let's see. Someone asks, I am looking to improve my leadership skills. Can you give me some tips on what makes a good leader in a virtual center?
Okay. Well, I've been talking about them for the last 27 minutes, but I would say the most important thing is to look at yourself, to have that, 3 a.m. Discussion with yourself saying, am I really contributing to the success and the failure of my company? What am I doing? And go get some help. And I will just tell you, we're a leadership development company. So obviously companies hire us, but you can't wait for your company to go hire an outside source. And most training organizations internally are just agents and managers that have been actually promoted. I'm not saying that's not good, but we're not teaching people how to do QA scores and listen to calls. It's about inspiring, motivating, driving change. These are leadership skills. Take it upon yourself to take responsibility of your own career. Go buy a book, listen to a podcast. If you have any other questions, contact us at info@virtuallivelabs.com, and we're happy to answer those questions. I get on the phone with people all the time. Again, always trying to glean what's going on inside the marketplace and companies that we're not talking with, and to see how that we can help them, but always willing. And I had a woman reach out that read my book as a first line supervisor, and in less than a year later, because their company grew, she became a senior vice president, actually in a financial institution, because she reached out and I sort of helped her plot things out. So you really can take charge of your own destiny. Use your communication feedback loops, use your touch points, build your foundational blocks so that people know that you care. But bottom line, look at yourself in the leadership mirror and go get some help, pick up a book, listen to a podcast, and take control of your own destiny.